Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. Could be, might be, might be. I think we actually got to the point where we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for tuning in to the latest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. Today, as like most days, I have got my Wednesday night brother from another mother here with me, currently semi-preoccupied, also with the end of the Green Bay game, understandably, the one and only Mr. Golf T-Vapes. I think.
I'm here. I just had to unmute for a moment.
There we go.
Ready to go. I'm a little fired up right now. I'm seeing some bullshit, but that aside, that's just going to get me more fired up. You guys might not hear from me in the news as much because I am a little preoccupied right now, being as it is in the fourth quarter, and scores are tight here.
I was going to say, understandable in the conditions that we're working with right now.
I'm just saying, I'm ready to talk some shit because there's a whole lot of stuff going on that's going to be quite interesting coming up here soon.
Hell yes. So we may have some other folks jump in. We might not. You know how it tends to go around here, but we're going to go ahead and kick it right off and jump like we do in the beginning of most shows into the news and recent events, things that have gone on or been released, been talked about since the last time we've done a show for you fine folks. Right off the top, we did get the names of the 6 fighters who violated the unofficial rule from the California State Athletic Commission's hydration regain standard, I believe is what they call it. The amount that they had bulked back up from the time that they weighed in till the time that they fight is significantly more than 15% of the total body mass. Those included Mr. Costa himself, Killaby Davis, Mr. Bermudez, Super Sadiq, ironically, and the biggest ironic name for me that was on that list was Sabina Mazo, the woman that I refer to as the one who looks too small to be a featherweight, actually came in with more than 15% body mass regained from the weigh-in until the fight. So all of them were over the 15%. So that just tells you a little bit about the weight cut that we're talking about in the UFC these days. Jumping from there, other action going on aside from the meat and potatoes that will be this particular episode, UFC 242. This weekend has all sorts of things going on this weekend. Fight Pass, ironically, will carry most of the action aside from the UFC Saturday morning, late Friday evening, depending on where you are. Invicta Phoenix 2 tournament goes down Friday night. The ladies will be going at it, as well as Saturday night, in actual Saturday night, Bellator 226 is the Ryan Bader versus Chuck Congo / featherweight tournament for Bellator kickoff. Lots of MMA this weekend to be watched. Lots of combat sports for everybody to tune into. We did get a couple of interesting announcements this weekend as well, or this week rather, since the last episode. The biggest one so far, quite literally, is Bigfoot Silva versus Gabriel Gonzaga will be headlining BKFC 8 October 19th. The big men are going bare knuckle, and it's going to be pretty ridiculous, I do believe. Those are 2 big strikers, literally and physically, so that's going to have some serious holy shit potential in the bare knuckle world as well. The big men are starting to find their way in and get their rhythm, so to speak. We also got the announcement, I believe it was day before yesterday, that the Bellator 234 card now has its headliner. That also has me very intrigued. One, Sergey Karatanov, coming fresh off his victory over Matt Mitrione, will be fighting my man LDV, the Swarm, Linton Vassell. So that is definitely going to be interesting and worth watching. I can promise you that much. And speaking of the world of Bellator, we also got confirmation this week. Chris Cyborg has officially signed her contract with Bellator. Cyborg is still going to be here in the fight world. She will be with Bellator. Not really surprising. They'll give her the opportunity to fight all of the easy fights she can handle and all of the sponsors that she can cram onto her outfit. So keep your eyes peeled. Cyborg's back eventually. Yay. A thing that I noticed this week that hadn't really occurred to me, and we kind of talked a little bit about it last week, Mike Brown's fighters have not been doing the greatest lately in their track record. Dustin Poirier is also a Mike Brown fighter, so it's going to be interesting to keep an eye, or an ear rather, on the corner work coming from Mike Brown, seeing as how that camp is kind of in a bit of a slump right now, and that's generally an indication of the management of the fighters if it's an entire camp issue, in my opinion, rather. So that's definitely, I'm definitely going to be looking particularly for Mike Brown's advice once we get into this weekend's battles. But moving along from there, we had talk last night of Alexander Gustafsson reconsidering his retirement, now contemplating a possible return back to the UFC if they would give him the chance to fight Luke Rockhold at 205. We've said it a million times. I'm never excited about fighters retiring, deciding that they want to come back again and again and again. And generally, when they do it once, they do it again, and it becomes that pattern where we see guys just stumble down the trail of not into it as much as they need to be able to compete on that level as much as they want to, and it typically doesn't go well. And I generally don't go that route, but I do think that this might be one of the few exceptions. I mean, we all know that Gustafsson is a great fighter. We all know that he was in his head because John Jones beat him. And, you know, credit to Anthony Smith, man. He is a bad motherfucker, but when he beat Gustafsson as well, I can understand that the frame of mind that would leave him in, where he wanted to retire. But realistically, I think he still got it. And I think we all know that he still got it. And we knew that he wasn't going to stay retired. And I think this is one of those situations where it might take a Luke Rockhold trying to validate his not retiring, even after he was called out specifically by Dana White that he should hang him up. This will be Luke's opportunity to prove that, you know, he can still hang, he can still bang, and he can do it at 205. And Gustafsson's chance to, you know, validate for himself that he shouldn't have retired. And either way it goes, I think it would be a good matchup. So, you know, we'll have to keep our eyes on that and see if that actually comes to fruition as well. Fingers crossed that it does.
I second that notion.
I think it would be a great proving point for both gentlemen, who clearly are both in a position where they need a little validation or they need a little retirement speech. So we'll see either way how it goes. They did announce yesterday officially that Austin Vanderford, Mr. Paige Van Zandt, as it were, is going to get his third soup can in a row over in Bellator, this time on the 234 card. You know, go LDV headline event. But Mr. Van Zandt will be over there fighting soup cans again as well. Two quick things that I want to discuss real quick before we get into some meat and potatoes here. The first one is GSP talking to the press yesterday and saying that he's not particularly happy that he retired. He's not particularly sad that he retired, but he did it because it takes so much of his life to devote to a fight at the top level that he feels it's the only way that he can do it, and that they wouldn't give him the fights that he wanted. So there's no point in staying around, though he would still be interested in a fight with Khabib. Although, asterisks, I do think a lot of that also depends on this weekend's events, because if Khabib gets ragdolled by Dustin, I don't think there will be as much interest in the quote unquote super fight between GSP and Khabib. So if we get hashtag Anu this weekend, I think this GSP finally puts his competition or his championship chapter of his life away, like he described it. The last thing I do want to take just a quick second to mention here is we did officially get a statement from Dana White on the BJ Penn situation. Officially from Dana White's very own mouth. What I saw was sad, and we're done. We're not doing this anymore. There will not be any more BJ Penn fights in the UFC. We're through. I don't want to pretend that I'm his dad or I'm his boss. I'm bigger than him or I'm better than him, but BJ Penn needs to figure BJ Penn out right now more than he needs to fight. After seeing the headlines for the last couple of weeks in a row, BJ Penn has been in, I believe it is 4 bar fights in the last 3 weeks. One of them was a bar fight that continued outside to become, again, a bar fight, and he actually got his ass put down in that fight, and it's getting bad. And, you know, Dana said it himself. He is 1-9-1 since 2010 on a 7-fight losing streak. We're in one of those situations where it's starting to make Chuck Liddell's fall from grace look well-timed. BJ needs to hang him the fuck up. He's starting to get to that point where he's legitimately damaging what legacy he may still have. And I actually 100% agree with Dana in this situation. Enough is enough. It's, you know, sometimes you got to take the horse out to the fucking pasture, and it's time. BJ obviously has not been able to decide that it's time for himself, and his actions have basically made it uncontinuable to go the way that they have been. So it's not the way we want to see it, but hopefully this is the last time we see BJ Penn in the headlines for some shit like this, because we're not going to see him on a UFC card anytime soon. It sucks, but like one Max Holloway often says, sometimes it is what it is.
We do BJ some good to go hang out with Max. Teach him a thing or two.
You know, it probably really would. It definitely wouldn't hurt. I can say that much for damn sure. But that will get us to the meat and potatoes of this particular episode here. The reason why we are talking about this upcoming weekend / late Friday night-ish, again, weird time, UFC 242, Khabib versus Dustin in Abu Dhabi. The new custom stadium specifically built for a UFC event in Abu Dhabi, the new grander stadium, bigger than the previous stadium by numerous factors. This will be the unification bout for the 155-pound men's championship belt. As expected, most times when the UFC travels abroad, the country of the event tends to get more shine in the fights than would be a general mix-up of the events, and this is certainly no exception. We talked a little bit about it earlier off air as we were getting everything ready here. This card, top to bottom, is absolutely filled with Russians and Muslims. And I'm not saying that in any denigratory way. I'm just saying that as a matter of fact, the same way that we mentioned that last week, UFC Fight Night China's card was filled top to bottom with Chinese fighters. It's the same thing. When they came to the UAE, they brought in tons of local representatives. This being a filler move, as they often do when we go abroad, actually, in a couple of ways for this weekend's card, did work out, because there are a few sleeper fights on this card that aren't really the biggest names that I believe are still going to be able to bring some excitement and some fireworks to the early Saturday card. It is, I believe, prelims kick off. Let me see if they're still listed here in the Eastern. Yeah, 9:15 a.m. is when the early prelims kick off. Ouch. That's early.
That's a good time for me. I'm up at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I believe that's Pacific time.
No, that's Central time because they adjust if you're on their website. It adjusts to your time zone.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll take that then. 9 o'clock is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So we will start right off at the top in the early prelims because, like I said, there are a couple here that are really generally early prelim cards aren't anticipated to be the greatest. This is not necessarily going to be an, oh my God, you can't miss it early prelim, but I will say that all four of the fights on the early prelim card do have potential to be exciting fights. Right off the top, Don Madge has serious potential, but they're putting him up against someone who is also relatively new. And Don Madge himself isn't necessarily a household name yet. He's had a couple of highlight reel moments, but we're not going to give him a full breakdown just quite yet. We'll give him credit. They're opening the show with him, and he does have potential to open it excitingly. Moving along from there, Zach Cummings, it's got a weird pattern to his fight record in the UFC. It's almost to the point where he wins 2 and then he loses 1. He wins 2 and then he loses 1. He can't hit that 3-fight win streak. Maybe this fight will change that. Maybe. Not holding my breath, though. Moving on from there, Nordine Talib is always exciting to watch because the man is just ridiculously talented. It's just a matter of he's one of those fighters, like we say more often than not, which version of him shows up. Do we see the hot Nordine Talib or do we see the cold Nordine Talib that's easily taken down and easily ragdolled, and fights with his chin hanging out and he's easily shot? Not the best record in the world, not the worst record in the world, very middle of the road, but potential to get his shit together. Same with the premier fight for the early prelims, Belal Muhammad versus Takashi Sato. Both of these gentlemen as well. Not the best ranked fighters in the world, not the most exciting all of the time, but potential to get their shit together and have an exciting fight just the same. None of these early prelim fights are can't miss fights, but they all do have potential to live up and give us a little bit of fireworks. But moving along from there to the prelim card, that's a little bit different of a story. We've got 4 fights. Really, only one of them has the potential to really give us fireworks. This is a lot of fluff. This is where they stuffed that pillow, as it were, with the bullshit fights. And even the mention-worthy fight in this particular situation is really a little bit hard for me to mention it. We're talking, of course, about the premier fight on the prelim card itself, Joanne Calderwood, JoJo, versus Andrea KGB Lee. Now, I have nothing against either one of these ladies. I think either one of them could be a very big potential star in the division. The problem is that it feels like we're getting a little bit of that Dana White Contender Series style push where anytime you get a win, they're trying to immediately say, well, this is a title contender. This is, the top of the division. This is the the hottest thing there is right now in the division. It has to get the next title shot. Slow the fuck down. JoJo's coming off of a loss, and there was still someone saying in the presser yesterday that with a victory over Andrea Lee, she could leapfrog Caitlin Chukagian and get the next title shot. Coming off of a loss against a girl that she's fighting this weekend who is not the number 1 contender and would give no reason for you to leapfrog over the actual number 1 current contender. I like JoJo. I enjoy watching Andrea Lee fight as well. Neither one of these ladies are ready for a title shot at this current point in time, regardless of if a spectacular finish happens on either side of the octagon.
This is exactly what happens when you have too much fluff in a division. There's a lot of that going on lately where a lot of these divisions aren't very deep. So they're, oh, this is the next guy. No, they're really not. They're getting beat by the other, this is the next guy.
Yeah,
or,
lot.
This soup can is awesome, so we're going to let him fight this soup can. Get the fuck out.
Yeah, there's absolutely been an excess of soup can victories equating to title-worthy performances where they aren't really that. It's just, like you said, the divisions aren't really the deepest all the way across the board right now. Granted, we do have several divisions that are a little ridiculous right now, like the main event, but we'll get there in a minute. So for now, we'll take a baby step and we will dig into the meat and potatoes that is the meat and potatoes of our meat and potatoes segment here, the main card itself. We're going to start at the tippity top here. Curtis Razor Blades, Shamil, I'm going to try this, Abdurakhimov, I believe that's correct. Shamil Abdurakhimov, I think that's how he says it. I apologize to you, sir, if I've said it incorrectly. Shamil, I'm not going after that name too many times, is a little bit of a dark horse on this card. This is one of those gentlemen where you don't see a number really high ranked beside his name, and you think, it's another local soup can words that they're going to throw to Curtis Blades to just, elbow open and have his way with. And then you start looking into Shamil's record and who he has absolutely decimated. So the only losses that he has in his 20-4 pro career in the UFC anyway are to an early Derek Lewis and an even earlier Tim Johnson. It's Derek Lewis pre-Ngannou, and this is Tim Johnson in his fucking prime. Shamil is on a little bit of a dark horse path through the UFC here. And it's not that I don't think Curtis Blades is capable. Curtis Blades has elbows that will absolutely slice anybody's elbows the fuck up if you stand in front of him and give him the opportunity. But he's not the best all around. He doesn't have the best gas tank, even though he does have a great wrestling background. He exerts his energy inefficiently, and he leaves himself open, and he's a little sloppy in his techniques, if I'm to be honest here. And he leaves himself a lot of open windows, and it's cost him more often than it hasn't in my experience here. And I think with the type of overlook that Shamil tends to get, I think we might be in another one of those situations again where you're not going to necessarily train for a guy that you don't have any fear of because he doesn't have a reputation, especially a guy like Curtis Blades who tends to be a little bit led by his ego. I think this is going to be one of those situations where that ego is going to get his ass in trouble. I think Shamil is actually going to take this one. I think he's going to shock the world and kick off the first big, oh shit, for the UAE Department of Local Gentlemen here. I think Shamil takes this one, actually.
That's a little bit of I won't call. It's definitely a different direction than I was going with this fight. I'm not going to say it's a stretch of the imagination because it's not. The dude's been in there. Obviously, look at his pro career. He's fought some really fucking tough, highly ranked opponents. I mean, let's just go with what's current. The Black Beast, Derek Lewis. You fought him. He is still a legitimate heavyweight contender. It's gonna be a tight fight. Granted, I do think Curtis gets it done. I don't foresee this one going upset. I think this is gonna go Curtis's way. Those elbows, and I think what's gonna happen here is he's gonna have to lean on his wrestling in this fight.
Yeah, I agree absolutely.
If he does not, then he's gonna end up getting beat. But he needs to lean on his wrestling and pray to God he's got his fucking cardio in shape because he has never been known for having a good gas tank. Look, there's no heavyweight that has a really good gas tank, period. They're heavyweights. It just doesn't happen. You're too big. Physics or anatomy and physiology. We'll go that way. But Curtis Blades, definitely has not been one of those guys where you go, oh my God, he has a premier gas tank in the heavyweight division.
Right.
So I think this is all going to come down to where's his gas tank? Does he lean on his wrestling? Because if he does, he gets it to the ground. That's going to be a long night, and he's going to end up taking it via ground and pound. I think if he goes that route. Now, if he decides to stay on his feet, I don't think that's going to go his way because it's hard to throw elbows from the feet. You're not John Jones, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not that nimble.
No, there's not many people that are. So it's one of those ones where I think it could go. It could go either way, but I'm gonna lean towards Curtis Blades on this one. I don't foresee the upset coming. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Vegas odds on this one and go Curtis Blades.
Interesting. No, I absolutely will agree with you that if Curtis can implement his elbows and use his strong points, use his wrestling, and get this to the ground and use the razor blades elbows, then he absolutely has the opportunity here. I just think that I think he might be a little too full of himself at this point. Some of the interviews that I've heard from him in the last couple of weeks, he's really riding his high on his own horse. He's drinking a little bit of the Curtis Blades Kool-Aid himself, and I think he might be overlooking a little bit here, and I think Shamil might have the edge, but we will definitely have to tune in and find out. Now, from here, that leads us into the triple lightweight closeout here. This is a 155 showcase at the end of this event here. The one that we're going to talk about first here, Islam Makhachev versus Davi Ramos. This is main card fluff at its finest. Neither one of these gentlemen are undeserving. We've been over this a million times. If you're in the UFC, you obviously earned your way there in one fashion or another. But this is a situation where we have two gentlemen who are essentially getting as much showcase at this point in the event, in the card's progression, as the co-main event and the main event. Because if you've seen any of the events that start off with a triple series card like this, there are very few people actually in the arena or in the stadium that the event's happening in during the early prelim cards. It's generally the announcers, the ring card girls, the table for commentators. And then when you look around on the camera for that particular set of fights, it's usually just the corner men. There's not really a lot of people in the crowd. As you get in towards the prelims, generally you see the crowds are starting to fill in, but you're still far from, capacity sold out status here. And it's usually into the main card itself and then closing towards the main event of a card like this, of an event like this, where you've got all the people in the stadium, the asses in the seats, as it were, the eyeballs of the event on the ring itself. So this is one of the situations where you're getting a fight that gets almost as much exposure as the main and co-main that get put on the poster, and you drop the ball. Islam Makhachev and Davi Ramos are bottom of the barrel fighters in the lightweight division. And I understand that you're trying to keep the teams together and you're trying to represent the local fighters, but you could have just as easily done that by switching this fight with the Curtis Blades fight and the Shamil fight. Like, I don't understand the importance of keeping the three lightweights closing out the event because they don't have that much of an impact in the lightweight division either way if either one of these gentlemen win. That being said, I think Islam Makhachev is going to be able to take this match, but how did we end up with such a potentially exciting fight in the Blades matchup and such an uninteresting such an uninteresting matchup in the Islam Makhachev versus Davi Ramos fight, sitting in the, runner-up spotlight situation for the event? I think Makhachev takes it because I think he's the better overall fighter, but I don't think that fight is worth giving a full breakdown to. So I'm just going to use my time right here to complain about the placement from the fucking UFC.
I'm right there with you on this one. The only thing I would like to add to that is I think Abu Dhabi is going to be a little bit different in this situation. This is a brand new stadium that they built for this. Yep. I think when they pan the cameras, this is going to be the first time you'll ever see in a UFC event that maybe not the early prelims, but by the prelims, that place is going to be a packed house. Not to mention, anybody who's been to the Middle East knows it is hot as fucking balls there. That place is going to have air conditioning. Then people are going to want to be inside.
This is true.
Not to mention, from what I understood here, I hear there's going to be a lot of royalty there at this event. From the Middle East, sheiks, fucking everything, the whole 9 yards. I hear quite a few high politicians are going to be there from what I've read up and seen, which will be really cool to see. Again, why I'm not even talking about this fight, because I don't think it belongs on the main card, period. It belongs maybe prelims. I don't think it's bad enough for early prelims. This is definitely a prelims fight.
I wouldn't push it that hard, but I agree. This is absolutely prelim worthy.
But what I'm wondering, because this is a highly Muslim society, we have a bunch of women fighters on this card that are the women that are fighting on there that are basically half naked, and that is not for them. That's not an okay situation. How are they going to take that? How is that going to go? The other thing that I think you're going to notice in this event, there's going to be separated seating, because this does happen in those types of countries where men will sit in one section, the women will sit in the other.
Right.
That doesn't mean there might not be some guys from the U.S. there or some other more progressive countries that are sitting with their misses, but for the most part, you're going to see it separated. Yeah. What I do think. However, I could be wrong. I've been in the Middle East a couple times now, so from what I've seen in those types of countries, not all of them are as progressive as we would like to think. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty progressive of them to hold an MMA fight there, and a really big one at that, at least main event wise. The rest of it, not so much, but it'll definitely be interesting. I really think they could have done a better job of stacking this card, though, especially being it's your first time in Abu Dhabi. And from what I'm third time, excuse me. But from what I'm understanding, apparently they have a multiple more fights that they're going to want to be doing there, because apparently the UFC has been in talks because of this new stadium that was built specifically for this reason. Yep. So I just foresee something a little bit different going on there, but who knows? We'll see.
Definitely a possibility here. I don't know. It's one of those situations where I agree with you completely. There's so many more fighters. If you're looking for representatives of the Middle East in general, or of the Muslim faith, which is the predominant faith in the country where we're holding this event, and part of the reason the behavior is dictated in such a manner for an event in the seating and things like that, I think there's much better representatives available here to fill this card with than some of the fluff that we've got. It's exactly the reason why we're not talking about some of the other events some of the other fights rather that are going to be on this card. One other thing I did want to take a quick moment to mention here that I did forget to talk about earlier in the news and recent events segment. We did have the re-emergence from the thought once lost mayhem Jason Miller back to social media yesterday. He released a fairly lengthy statement, basically a full-on apology for some of the ridiculous bullshit he has been through in the last couple of years, and multiple arrests, multiple incidents. He really went down a bad spiral. The last big thing he did was the show Bully Beatdown on MTV. He had one more professional fight after that in a very, AAA league MMA organization, and got beat really bad right out. And then from there went on a string of law-breaking episodes where he did not have a good time and ended up with some jail time. So He did come out and say that he did want to make, his amends. He apologized for his behavior and is now, he says, sane and sober and ready to come back and be a productive member of society again. So I, for one, am very excited to hear that because I was a fan of Jason Miller's back in the day, and I did enjoy the show Bully Beatdown. I love the concept that they took with that, but it was really sad to hear the path that he ended up down in that particular situation. Props to Jason Miller for making a comeback, and apparently the Bears as well, based on the fist swing that we're seeing here.
Yeah, sorry about that. FYI, anybody who's watching this game, interception, Packers, towards the end of the game, that might be it. That might be the dagger, maybe. There's still 3 minutes to go.
Well, in a futile attempt here to give TJ the extra 3 minutes he needs to woosaw the end of the game into his absorption level, we are going to jump to a segment that everyone knows and loves, the newest segment on the show here, the one and only Casual Corner. No. Just saving it because this card had a whole lot of nonsense that I didn't want to drag a casual through. So I figured I would bring you right down to the end here where you can give your piece and then we'll give our piece right away and you don't have to sit and wonder.
You could have done that before I did the research for the main card. And you just told me to worry about the last 2 fights.
Pretty sure I did the other day, though, for the record.
I'm pretty sure you told me to keep an eye out for the last 6 people. Not 4.
I think I said 4. Pretty sure.
Well, I got more notes for Islam.
Well, that's all right. That's all right.
I have more notes for Islam versus Davi than I do Edson versus Paul.
Well, that's all right. You're giving TJ foosball time here.
How the fuck did you have more notes on that versus Felder Barboza? And they fought each other before.
Well,
and that's why I'm willing to let her go.
Okay, then I don't want to know.
This is just pitiful, these notes. I kind of wish... Edson literally wrote for Edson versus Paul, both strikers. Edson has a 5-inch reach. That's all I could gather from that. But then the fight below it, Islam versus Davi, I wrote won most of his fights by submission. I don't even understand my notes at this point. Davi throws more. I'm maybe gonna punch more.
He does have a bit of a striking style.
Yep. And I couldn't find any fun stuff on the Edson versus Paul, so I'll just do the matchup stats. Okay. And then give you my outcome perspective.
That's casual enough for me.
Okay. So Edson. One of these things I wrote somebody was younger than somebody, but I don't even know where I wrote that anymore. Okay. Record for Red, aka Edson. So if you ever hear me referring it to Red, now you know. 27-0. Wow. 16-4-0 for Paul. So Edson has a little bit more experience.
In the UFC, yeah.
But he has just a smidgen bit. Let's see.
I believe Edson also did have a career as outside of MMA as well. I don't remember if it was Muay Thai or if it was just straight kickboxing, but I believe Edson was in some other organizations before he went straight MMA.
Okay. So this is another interesting thing. I actually, when I wrote this, I wasn't expecting anything from it. The fact that Edson has a 5-inch reach when they are both the same height, that motherfucker must have god arms.
Well, and the thing that you have to take into consideration about Edson as well, which reach were you looking at? Were you looking at his arm reach or were you looking at his leg reach? Because Edson is a kicker. So is Felder.
Yeah, but his leg reach is 41 for Edson, where Paul is 40. So it's only a 1-inch difference for legs. Reach is arms, isn't it?
Generally.
So that motherfucker has some long-ass arms.
That's what I'm saying. You have to pay attention to both sets.
Yeah, normal size legs, but long-ass arms. I was expecting Paul to be shorter, but knowing that they're the same height, that puts a tricky twist on it.
Right?
What the fuck are you doing with such massive arms? I can't even.
Arms, bro?
Do you even arms? Did you skip leg day?
No, he did not ever.
Okay, so knockouts. Edson got 60. Paul's got 67%. Submissions 5 versus 7. Decisions 35 versus 27. Oh, I'm already going for Paul because more knockouts, KTOs, and less decisions. And this match seems like it's going to be a lot of hugging on the floor and humping. Hugging and humping. Not this one, but the card in general.
Yes.
A lot of them are wrestlers.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time watching like a softcore porn, and I'm a little So hopefully this motherfucker will get me a knockout in the first round, so I can at least be excited before we go back to the softcore porn. So Paul, get him.
There's a possibility.
Get him, Paul. And then the main fight. This was depressing for me, because being the casual that I am, I have only heard Khabib, Khabib, Khabib this, Khabib that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually gonna witness one of these great fights. And then I start doing a little bit of research on this guy, and the whole time he's either talking to the person he's wrestling or he's talking to the ref. It's like, shut the fuck up and fight. And then he goes and attacks a bunch of people, and his people go in and attack a bunch of people. I was really, really disappointed. I did write, though, Khabib at least has it for him that he is the best wrestle humper out there. So we'll give him props on that. You are a great humper, sir. I'd like to... Never mind. Huh. So,
number one bullshit.
Poirier. Okay, let's look at his thingy.
When you open the bag, you Poirier.
So, he is a southpaw, which I guess is a left-handed person.
It means he stands opposite. So generally, when you're right-handed, you'll put your left hand forward and you hold your right hand back.
Yeah.
When you're southpaw and you're right-handed, you put your right hand forward and your left hand back and you stand opposite, but you're still punching dominantly with your right hand. It's kind of like skateboarding goofy, where you stand the opposite way that you normally would. Same thing for boxing.
So this is where I thought it was interesting, where Khabib is a humper. Dustin's a striker southpaw motherfucker. That normally shakes things up, except for with a humper. How are you going to try to strike and not get humped? And that is the question. Khabib is already beat. Isn't the McGregor dude southpaw? He's already beat the best of them out there. So, while I'm kind of pissed off at Khabib's last move, I think he's taken it. And I think we're going to see some very, very fancy leg twisting, toe curling. Get it? Because people put their toes in the fence. Toe curling, humping going on.
There's absolutely a very good possibility.
That's the casual thoughts.
Well, much appreciated, Miss Casual. Thank you, Miss LUMI, for your thoughts and your notes.
No problem.
So, we will jump back in. We will start with the potatoes of the meat and potatoes in the meat and potato segment of the meat and potatoes that is the main card here for this evening. One Edson Barboza versus Paul the Irish Dragon Felder in the rematch that is actually kind of a sleeper fight in most people's opinion. This card, for what it is, has mainly been advertised as the Dustin versus Khabib fight. That is the main event. But one of the things that is kind of snuck under the radar, in my opinion, as far as promotions, as far as hype for this card overall, this is the rematch of Paul Felder's first professional UFC defeat and one of the greatest fights in UFC history. These gentlemen stood and traded nearly strike for strike, move for move, style for style in one of the best possible highlight reel battles in UFC history there is to talk about. This is the rematch of that fight. These former teammates who went in and absolutely put it all on the fucking table for the crowd to see in their first matchup are coming back 4 years later, different fighters, still completely amicable, still respectful, no beef whatsoever. Professional fighters coming to run it back one more time. Both of these gentlemen are very, very interesting fighters in their own right. Edson Barboza might have the most dangerous legs in the UFC, and Paul Felder might have one of the sneakiest spinning back fists in the male side of the UFC. They've both got striking. They've both got kicking. They've both got grappling. They've both got wrestling. They both have gas tanks. These are two gentlemen who are very, very close images of each other style-wise. Both have great fight IQs, both creative in their striking, in their particular set of skills that they've got. This is a fight that I don't think is easy for either gentleman to win. I think what this particular fight comes down to is the evolution of a fighter. Who are you now compared to when you came into the UFC? If you're running back a fight that you had years ago, how different are you from that fight versus how different is he from the man that you fought? This is a situation where I think that Edson Barboza is very much the same fighter today that he was 4 years ago when he handed Paul Felder that very close decision loss. On the other side of that coin, though, I think that we're looking at a very, very different Paul Felder today than we saw with that funny little haircut in the octagon 4 years ago, getting ragdolled back and forth, spinning kicks, throwing fucking elbows and shit with Edson Barboza. I think the Paul Felder that we're looking at today is tougher. I think he's smarter, and I think he's a little more agile. I think he's a little sleeker in his movement. I think he's a little keener in his striking, and I think he's more hungry now for the victory than he was when he stepped in there the first time, because now he knows what it feels like to get that loss if he lets it go like he did the first time that they fought. I think it's going to be a very close fight, but I think Paul Felder gets it done this time. In the rematch, I think it's late in the third. I think we're going long fight here, but I don't think it's going to the judges. I think Felder gets it done just shy at the end.
I think you're almost 100% spot on with almost everything I had to say. Number one, Paul Felder, when they fought previously, he was very green. He was, at the time, I think 3-0 or something like that in the UFC. That was his first professional loss, was to Edson Barboza. Look, it's nothing to shake a stick at. You lost to a fucking fantastic fighter. Speaking of Barboza, he is the only man to have ever stopped somebody with leg kicks, body kicks, and a head kick. He's the only person to have ever stopped a fight with all of those. In fact, he has one of the most shown replays of any fighter, a la Edson Barboza, Terry Adams spinning wheel kick to the head. You don't see that. that's why it's highlighted so often. But I can say Edson still looks like the same fighter. As you said earlier, he still has the same fight style. He doesn't seem like he's progressed a lot, which is why he hasn't made a run at a title. He's come close a couple times, but because people see the holes in his game, they're able to stop him in his tracks. Paul Felder, on the other hand, though, that motherfucker right now, the Irish Dragon, he's a force to be reckoned with. Not just at cage side when he's calling fights, but inside of the octagon as well. Look at his last fight. Just phenomenally dismantled his opponent with ease. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. I'm a big fan of Paul Felder. I've watching how he's progressed. The way he's progressing now, he has a legitimate shot at making a good title run. Don't get me wrong. This is one of the toughest divisions that the UFC has. So that's saying a lot for him. And to be honest, this is going to be a fucking war. These two are not going to go down to the ground. Neither one of them are ground fighters. It's going to be... The only thing that Paul Felder needs to watch out for is Edson's kicks. As long as he's checking leg kicks and keeping an eye on his feet, he'll be just fine. Just like everybody else who's beaten Barboza. They know, check his kicks, watch for the legs. You know that's coming. He's going to throw some sort of spinning kick in there at some point. So you'll know to be on the lookout for it. But Paul Felder, he's a completely different fighter than he was when they first fought. That was almost half a decade ago. I mean, he has come leaps and bounds as a fighter, which is why he's ranked number 10 right now.
Yeah.
Not to mention the way he dismantled his last appointment. And that's right, I called him an appointment, not an opponent. He went in there. He ran that thing like he was going to the doctor's office. He ran in there, told him what was going on, and that was it. If he continues on this mean streak, that whole fucking division's on notice. If he puts Barboza away like he did in the last fight he had, one, it'll do two things for him. It'll avenge that one loss that he had to him.
Yeah.
Then two, it's going to put the rest of the top 10 on notice saying, hey, I'm coming for you, motherfuckers. And I think if he beats him, I think it's going to catapult him up there to probably like number 6 in the rankings. I think he might jump a couple of guys there. Namely because, well, Barboza's ranked 7, but to put away Barboza in a dominant fashion, it'll catapult you up there because he's not a gatekeeper by any means. Barboza is not. He's still a very solid, well-rounded fighter, but I think this one's probably going to go into deep territory. Both of these guys have fantastic gas tanks, so I have a feeling we're going to see probably late second, third round stoppage going Felder's way, and probably TKO wise. It's not going to be a knockout, but he'll probably get it done via punches and ground and pound.
Yep, I very much agree. And if like we always say, there's always a puncher's chance in any fight. And I tell you what, if Paul comes in there and he knocks out Barboza the way he knocked James Vick the fuck out, it's going to be real hard to deny Paul Felder a top 5, maybe a top 3 guy for his next fight. And this could actually be the beginning of his run at a legitimate title shot because he's been there. He's done that. He's done his fucking time and he's beaten a veritable who's who of the 155 fucking division. And he's done it with fucking style. He beat the shit. James Vick was absolutely an appointment more than an opponent. He was absolutely a fucking sparring partner compared to Paul Felder's fucking masterclass that he put on when he put that fucker out. I think if he comes in and puts on another show similar to that, if he can see the game that Edson's going to try to play, find those holes in it, and just get it done good, he's on the run. He's on the way there.
And there's one other thing I did forget to mention in this. Barboza's coming off a loss to a red-hot Justin Gaethje.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Look, that's nothing to shake a stick at, but Barboza has not been known to come off of losses fantastically.
This is true.
He doesn't come out looking like a completely different person every time, like he's trained and tried to fix holes in his games. He comes out with the same plan. So we'll see what happens, but I'm pretty sure Paul Felder gets this done like late second, mid third at the latest. I don't think it's going to go to the end. If it does go to a decision, that's going to be a fucking gnarly decision, and I would hate to be a fucking judge on that fight.
No shit. No, I think at this point, Felder's not really had a lot of rematch situations because he's only had the one loss. So I think it comes down to more than anything who can game plan. And like we said, Edson really seems like the same guy, and Felder's not one to not study an opponent. Look at how he took Vic the fuck apart. That's from watching tape and knowing what you're looking for. He's already fought Barboza once, and he took everything Barboza had to fucking throw at him the entire goddamn fight. So he knows what he's in for now, and all he had to do is go back and watch that old tape and compare it to any of Edson's recent fights, and you can see he's really similar, if not the exact same fucking fighter he was 4 years ago. I think if he's smart about it, I think Felder can make a good showing of this. But that's going to bring us to the meat and potatoes that is the meat and potatoes of the meat and potatoes in this meat and potatoes segment of the meat and potatoes of the goddamn show. We are talking about the main event for this weekend's UFC 242 card, Khabib cocksuckers versus Dustin Poirier. The Diamond versus the Eagle for the unification of the men's lightweight 155-pound championship belt. I really wish I could be more excited about this fight. I really do. I want to be excited. This is a belt being defended by a Russian Muslim in Russian Muslim territory, air quotes for those who are just listening. The UAE is obviously a Muslim country, but not Russian. I'm making generalizations. It's tongue-in-cheek. Calm the fuck down. We've got the face of Muslim fighting in the UFC, Khabib Nurmagomedov, versus one of the most stereotypical and iconic quote-unquote American boys in the Louisiana-raised Dustin the Diamond Poirier. This is an event highlighting the opportunity for the Muslim gentleman to win and defend his belt in Muslim territory with a crowd littered with Muslim fans and fellow Muslim fighters on the card, and the American out of his element going into enemy territory, as it were, to try and unify his interim status with the full-term champion of the division and take home the real gold, not the interim gold. My problem over anything else with this matchup is the two gentlemen that are fighting for the belt. And I know, before I even get into it, that this is an unpopular opinion. And I don't give a shit, because this is my opinion, and I'm not going to change it because it's unpopular. This is my opinion, and I formulated it through my own thoughts and my own experiences. I don't believe that Khabib deserves to be the champion. I don't believe that he beat Al Iaquinta, period. I think that that started an alternate timeline, as it were, through the UFC. On the other side of that coin, I don't believe that Dustin Poirier should be the interim champion. I think if we're going with the fact that there should have been an interim belt, I think that Khabib should have been stripped. There was no reason for an interim belt. If he was going to be out that long, he's not the champion anymore. Strip him and crown a new fucking champion with a contender match. Even further than that, if you're going to do an interim belt, because Khabib is going to be out so long, why the fuck does Dustin Poirier deserve that shot over Cowboy Cerrone or Al Iaquinta? How does Max Holloway, who's a great 145 champion but cannot say he has any claim at 155, come up to fight for the interim 155 belt over a Cowboy Cerrone, over a Justin Gaethje, over an Al Iaquinta, over legitimate gentlemen in the 155 division who have put the work in and not gotten the results for it? So how do we end up with an interim champion who should have never been given an opportunity for an interim championship belt? How do we have a champion who should have either been stripped of his belt or not been rightfully given that belt to begin with, given his performance, and then his subsequent behaviors after giving that belt in that performance? How do we have a gentleman who shouldn't be fighting as a champion, fighting against a gentleman who shouldn't have the opportunity to fight for a championship as the headline championship belt main event in a card where they built a stadium for this event? The times we lived in are not the times that we live in now. The world keeps going, and it's a strange place some days. And this is one of those days where I have to pick a fighter and break down a fight of two gentlemen I don't believe genuinely in my heart, of my own volition, my own opinion formed myself, should be competing in this match for this belt. But that's what I'm going to do, because that's what we do on this fucking show. But I want to make it very well known, I don't believe either one of these gentlemen deserve to be in the position that they're in. That's the case that I'm making, and I'll stand by that opinion 1,000%, popular or not. That being said, I think what this fight itself comes down to is, can Dustin stop Khabib from fucking his leg? Because that's what he's going to do. It's not what he's going to try to do. It's not what he's going to attempt to do. He's going to do it. That's what Khabib does. He's going to get you to the mat at some point. He's going to curl his leg behind yours so that you can't kick out, so you can't twist your hips to get away from him. And then he's going to climb you like a fucking snake. He's going to hump the hell out of your hip. And then he's going to punch you, and he's going to talk shit. And he's going to be doing it just loud enough to where the microphones above the ring can pick up the shit that he's talking. The question is, can Dustin, who has a bit of a wrestling background himself, the Louisiana boy can sprawl, can Dustin, in his wrestling background, combined with his legitimate striking, figure out the point to stop the takedowns and to get the shots in to prevent further takedowns, and possibly do what everyone in the fucking world, for the most part, wants to see happen, and actually knock Khabib out? Because as much as most people don't care for Khabib's fighting style, it is effective. Wrestle fucking will get you a win. It's not going to get you a lot of fans, and it's not going to get you a lot of popularity in the mainstream media, but it will get you wins. And that it has done for Khabib. It hasn't made him a lot of fans outside of the obvious Muslim community supporting their brand new champion in the organization. It hasn't made him a lot of casual fans, because the casual fans generally don't care for wrestle fucking, which is precisely what he does. But it has won him a lot of fans in the fact that he's become sort of a dark horse against the stereotypical flashy champions that the UFC used to praise and to groom, i.e. the Conor McGregors of the world. The problem is, you can't say one thing is bad and then bring in something equally as bad and say that it's okay. Then you're just a hypocrite. That's kind of what we've got going on here. Khabib Nurmagomedov is very much a one-trick pony. He doesn't have striking worth a shit. Yes, he can punch. No, it's not good. He doesn't have submissions worth a shit. His submission game is based on wearing you out with his wrestle fucking. His submissions are never beautiful like a true technical, precise jiu-jitsu artist would be. He doesn't have much of a chin. We've seen him get caught with sloppy shots and get noticeably rocked. So it's not like he's a tough guy who can just take all the storm. He's a one-trick pony. He's a leg humper. He's a wrestle fucker. That's what he does. He's extremely good at it. He's world-class at it, but that's what he does, and he's a one-trick pony. Dustin, on the other hand, is a very well-rounded fighter, and we've seen, especially against Max Holloway, is a large man at 155, and he's had several public issues making 155 before. He's big enough to where the cut to 55 is starting to get a little tough for him. So he's large when he actually steps into the octagon. So can he use his size advantage? I believe he will be bigger than Khabib when he gets in the octagon. Can he use his more well-rounded toolbox that I believe that he has to negate the obvious shot that's going to be coming, the wrestling attack that's going to relentlessly be coming from the Nurmagomedov corner. I think he can. I genuinely think he can. He's got more than enough behind him motivation-wise. He's got more than enough in his head intelligence-wise, and he's got more than enough in his hands striking-wise. He's got a good enough team. He's got a good enough ability. We know what Khabib is going to do. He's going to shoot. There's realistically every possibility in the world we could see a Ben Askren, Jorge Masvidal situation here. Khabib is easily as readable as Ben Askren is. You know the takedown is coming. It's not if, it's when. If Dustin can get his timing and his striking on point and use his defense enough to stop the takedown attempt, get his shots in, I think he can do it. I think he can put Khabib down. And I think if he does it in the UAE, it's going to be hard to deny him as a legitimate champion. And I think the other thing that this could open up, I think if Dustin can do it the way that I think he can, the other thing that this undeniably is going to set up is that Tony's going to get the next shot, and Khabib has no fucking choice but to rematch Conor as his next fight, like it or not. I don't think it's going to be what everybody wants, but I think it's going to be the way that the cookie is going to fucking crumble. And I think if that's the way that it plays through, I think that's the only inevitable outcome that's going to be left. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch to see how it plays out.
Well, that's a lot. Now, I'm going to roll off of a couple things here. For the most part, I agree with you. I say for the most part, but for this reason. Ally Quinta coming in on 24 hours notice and fighting him did phenomenally.
And went all the way to
a decision.
On 24 hours notice.
And he didn't get completely wrestled fucked the entire time. He noticeably rocked Khabib on more than one occasion. He very well could have won that fight. However, leave it up.
He was also noticeably one of the first people to be able to one-handed stop a Khabib takedown in its tracks, too.
This is true.
Worth mentioning.
Yep. And now, downside, it went to decision. He didn't finish the fight. So this is where I only have the one issue. It should be him being champion. But you leave it up to the goddamn people deciding the fights. The powers that be is what I will call them, because I can't think to call them anything nice. At that point, you're kind of up shit's creek without a paddle. Now, Donald Cerrone, he fucked himself. I'm going to say that right now. I love Donald Cerrone. Fucking cowboy. That's my dude. He fucked himself by taking the Tony Ferguson fight. That was a stupid fucking move on his part because he had a shot at the title, and I think he could have legitimately beat the brakes off of Khabib. However, things didn't play out that way. So we get this Khabib's in trouble with this Conor bullshit. So he's sitting out. Why the fuck does he still have the title? This is the part I agree wholeheartedly with. He's out for that long. Why did they not strip him? And let me make this very clear. It's not that he chose to be out. He was suspended. If you were out because of suspension and you can't defend your title, strip that motherfucker, pull it off like some wax off some big bushy eyebrows, because god damn it, you don't deserve it. If you can't represent the belt in the company the proper way and fashion, you should not be entitled to that. In fact, you shouldn't be in this position. However, Big Daddy Dana likes to feed us shit that we don't want. Unfortunately, because we're not babies and he's not feeding us baby food, we can't just spit it out. We have to fall into this suck it up buttercup thing. Now, where I stand with Dustin Poirier here, this is a little bit different. I don't think he should have fought Max Holloway for an interim. It probably should have ended up being Tony Ferguson for the interim. And I would have been perfectly fine with that fight. If he beats Tony Ferguson, sure, whatever. However, It is what it is. Again, in Max's thing, and you know what? Hats off to Max because he took that loss on the chin. It's like, dude, fantastic fight. They hugged it out, called it a day. Poirier avenged his only loss to Max Holloway. So for a lot of me, this is me being selfish. This possibly sets up a third fight between them, and the last two were fucking fantastic. I'm just saying, but I don't think it'll be for this belt ever again. Because Max he looked way too small for 155. Although Dustin looks fucking massive, but that brings me back to this. What we have at hand, we have Dagestani wrestle fucking versus probably one of the most well-rounded fighters in the division. There's not many out there that is as well-rounded as Dustin Poirier is. He has done his time. I think this. You're not going to like this opinion, but I think he has a legitimate reason to be in this fight. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see Khabib Tony right now over this, but Dustin has put in his work. He's done fights. Tony was sidelined for how fucking long? I don't think he deserved it right away. Cowboy made the mistake of fighting Tony, so he fucked himself there. Al, sorry you lost by decision. Even if I didn't agree with the decision, I have to go with what they say. It is what it is. Again, little Max Holloway action there for you. So, but Dustin, he's definitely done his work, and he did not just beat Max Holloway. He dismantled him during that fight. It was still a good fight, but he absolutely destroyed him. And when you destroy one of the best 145ers there are out there, that's a huge thing. Max is not. He's no longer arguably the best 145 ever. He is the best 145 ever. Period. Sorry for all those Jose Aldo fans or Jose, whatever you want to call him.
Hashtag where's Jose Waldo?
Yeah, where's Jose Waldo at? Twice, times two. So Dustin, he's definitely put in his work. He's put on great performances. He deserves to be here. Some of these other things that have laid waste and made it fall into this kind of threw off what I had the idea of this timeline coming up as obviously you as well, because we thought a lot of alike, especially when it came to Cowboy. Now, with all of that being said, there's the biggest worry I have in this fight for Dustin Poirier. He's a southpaw. That means his right foot is forward. When you're a southpaw facing an orthodox who is a wrestler, you are way more prone to fucking takedowns because that leg is a lot closer. They don't have to come across your body. It's right there straight for the pick-in. Now, with that being said, Dustin does have a fantastic sprawl. Watched him use it over and over again in many fights. And not to mention his hands are on fucking fire lately. I mean, if you doubt it, go back and watch that Max Holloway fight again. Because you're looking at somebody with some of the best hands at 145 period I'll argue this point. I'll say Dustin has the best hands at 155 period right now. And that's not to take anything away from anybody else in the 155 pound division, but Dustin, I think, really does have the best hands currently. I think he's going to reach out and touch Khabib on more than one occasion. I'm pretty sure we're going to see Khabib get rocked. Now, problem with Khabib getting rocked, we all know what happens next. He goes straight for the dog, humping the leg, get my Dagestani wrestle fuck on till I get greasy enough on your leg because I've blown my load so I can crawl my way up, try to get to the ovaries that I'm calling your ear so I can yell at it. If Dustin can manage that and stop the Dagestani wrestle fucking, he's going to have a very good day. If he can take a page out of Ally Quinta's book, figure out how to do it with one hand, Khabib is going to have a very bad day. A very, very bad day. To play devil's advocate here on the other side because I'm not a fan of Khabib at all. I don't like the way he portrays himself as this godliness is close to cleanliness type attitude. You're not fucking clean. You obviously don't know how to control your shit. Look, this is the fight game. People are going to talk shit about your family. They're going to talk shit about your kids, your dad who runs on the treadmills with you. They're going to talk shit about everybody. They're going to call you a dirty fucking rat. They're going to call you all kinds of things. That's the fight game. Get the fuck over it. Stop being a pussy. Stop doing stupid shit. If you can't control your emotions once the fight is over, you don't deserve to be in this sport. It's kind of, in my opinion, the same as beating women. You don't belong here. You keep that shit inside of the cage. Look, I get it. Lead up to fight, sometimes scuffles happen. We saw that previously when Jones and fucking DC went at it on a stage and were throwing punches at each other. Look, those ones happen, but once that fight is over, it's fucking done. You shut her down, you turn that fucking shit, and you wipe it out your mind, because if you beat the other guy, guess what? There's nothing to say. Now, if you just got your ass whipped, there's nothing to say either. However, Khabib is not that person. However, what he is, he's by far the most fantastic one-trick pony the UFC has ever seen. And I'm going all the way back. One-trick pony fantastic. Better than the early greats. Better than seeing Gracie demolish guys that were 4 times his size. One-trick pony. He's so fucking good at wrestling. It's fucking unbelievable, and it hurts me to say that. However, everybody has their kryptonite. As another great fucking one-trick pony just found out via flying knee. That one-trick pony, I'm pretty sure he might have something up his sleeve for this fight. I don't think so, though. I don't think we're going to see anything crazy. We're not going to see anything new out of him. However, what I will give him, based on the lead-ups and what I've seen so far, this is probably the most laser-focused I've seen him in a long time. And that's a scary thing. With him being that laser-focused on the fight, that's a really crazy thing. However, I don't think he gets this done this time. To be honest, I'm going to put it like this. Eagles can fly, but you can't crush a diamond with an eagle. It's not going to happen. Physics. So what's going to happen here, I don't think this is going to be a quick fight by any means. I'm pretty sure Dustin gets this done. And I think around the 3rd, maybe 4th round is when it's going to start to become evident that Dustin is handling it very well, and it's going to be very dominantly in those later rounds. Because I think what he can do is he can put enough leather on him to go ahead and slow down the takedowns and put Khabib out of his element. Unfortunately, it's time to have the Eagle's wings broken. Bring that motherfucker back down to the ground. Look, I say this every time Khabib fights. His last couple fights, though, I really honestly, to be completely honest, I didn't think those people were going to win. I did. In this case, though, I do think Dustin comes out of here and new. And it's going to be, I think he's going to finish him. And I'm really hoping so. But I think it's going to be like 4th round. And he's going to catch him with some leather. But that's all going to depend on his sprawl, though, too. I mean, if he can keep the sprawl up, he's going to be in good shape. But I think this is when we see the Eagle's wings clipped. He doesn't fly anymore. And we have to watch shit get thrown through buses' windows and people jumping over cages again. And it's going to be ugly. But to be honest, the other thing I would like to see happen, if that doesn't happen, make him fight Tony Ferguson. Although both of them agreed wholeheartedly, whoever wins this fight fights Tony Ferguson. They both said it. They both understand that that's the next guy that gets the shot. Guess what? I'm 100% behind that after the way he dismantled Cowboy. He had it. I mean, this should have been Cowboy's fight, but Cowboy fucked himself. Either way, nonetheless. I think Dustin takes it. I think it's going to be mid to late fourth round.
No, I tend to agree. I don't think it's going to be quick, and I don't think it's going to be easy. And I think it is absolutely going to depend on if Dustin can stop that fucking Dagestani sprawl, because we all know that Khabib is going to be looking for that front leg, standing southpaw. That fucking bone is just hanging out there for that dog to latch onto, and it makes it real easy for him to snatch that single leg and then lift your fucking foot up and push you backwards and sweep that fucking ankle and knock you on your ass. And once you're on the ground, that's when he starts to wrap your fucking legs up so you can't crawl away, and that's when he does his fucking leg mumbo jumbo. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think we both agree here that as much as Khabib is a one-trick pony of world-class proportions, I think Dustin can take it this time. I think Dustin has what it takes. I think he's got enough of a wrestling background, and he knows what he's in for. I think he's hungry for it enough right now. I think Dustin takes it.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other key here is, I'm wondering, did Dustin go back and watch the Al Iaquinta Khabib fight? Because if he did, that shows all of the fucking holes that are there. Every goddamn one of them. For a guy that took it on 24 hours notice, I'm just saying.
Right, for a guy who didn't have any time to watch tape or prep for that fucking fight, to be able to expose that many holes that many times, repeatedly, over and over, stuffing one-handed takedowns, legitimately rocking him more than one occasion. And I love Al, but I agree. I think Dustin's got better hands than Al does. And if Al got him the way that he did, if Michael Johnson was able to rock him the way that he did, if Conor was able to rock him the way that he was, I think that it's a case of history showing that chin is open to being cracked, and Dustin's real fucking good at throwing leather.
And the one other thing that I thought about, I'm wondering if Dustin decided to throw any liver kicks, because southpaws versus orthodox, liver kicks work fucking fantastically, because it's always open.
Especially in a guy like Khabib who stands so open. He's always, you can tell, even when he's in his boxing stance, he's so wide. Those ribs are open, man. Those ribs are open. The problem with that, though, is that with Khabib, you always got to worry about the risk of him catching that kick.
Yep, it's how fast can you get your leg to the body and back down on the floor.
Yeah, can you get the snap in there to where you've got your leg back out of the risk of danger before he has time to react to it?
Or you hit him hard enough to where he can only react by going, oh.
Right, yeah, he's got to absorb it rather than react to it, exactly. So the only other thing that I want to take just a moment to mention here real quick, I sure as fuck wasn't going to give it a breakdown, and I didn't really want to give it a moment in the news segment because I wasn't able to find anything definitively here either way. But the one last thing that bothers me about this card, obviously, if you've been paying attention, there's several issues with this card that I have, just on a personal level as a fan. The one last thing that I want to take just a moment to talk about here is that somehow Zubaira Tukhugov is still fighting on the prelim card for this event against Lerone Murphy. Zubair was the one who jumped in the octagon after Khabib and Conor and attacked Conor when his face was the opposite direction and got in the bitch-made fucking sucker punch shots that started the in-ring melee as his other companions jumped the octagon to try and jump Conor, while Khabib was jumping off the octagon stage into the crowd after Dylan Danis starting a melee in the crowd at the same time, which resulted in the subsequent suspension of Khabib, nearly stripping of the title, the giant fine, the whole kit and caboodle that resulted after that. But one of the things that Dana White said immediately after that, when they had confirmed the names of everyone that was involved, is that Zubaira was never going to fight in the UFC again, that type of behavior is never an acceptable thing to be done in the UFC, let alone as an employee of the UFC, and that his career in the UFC was done. He was immediately pulled from his next fight, which was with Artem as part of that team versus team battle, but we haven't seen him again since that time. Now, I know that initially Zubaira and the other gentleman, as well as Khabib and his partner that pulled him out before he got to DC, were all given initial suspensions. But I thought at that time, when that suspension was announced, that Dana had legitimately been a man of his word and followed through and cut this piece of shit from the fucking roster. It is very much to my chagrin that I have found out over the last 48 hours and a subsequent amount of digging in Google Foo on my part that not only did he not follow through on that, but then he has turned around and almost rewarded that fucking cuntish behavior in jumping the ring and assaulting Conor McGregor after the fight by giving him the prelim fight in Abu Dhabi opposite Khabib on the main event. And I just want to say, I understand that this is Dana's show to run, but this is a fucked up message to send, in my opinion. You can't reward that type of behavior, and that's exactly what this feels like to me. And I didn't want to give him any kind of a shine or credit during the news or the actual breakdown, but I wanted to make a point to mention it before we close the show out, because I think that's fucked up.
I got one thing to say on that, and I'm pretty sure I know how this ended up coming about. When all the suspensions and shit were being handed out, Khabib made a very public statement that said he would not fight for the UFC again if his teammates were not allowed to fight as well. So this is another case, in my opinion, of Daddy Dana stuffing his dick down our throats without our consent again, because it lets him push his narrative, what he wants to push. Which, that's hearsay. This is my own opinion. I formed that on my own. I want you to know that. But if you go back and look, Khabib did make a very poignant statement about that. So I'm just saying, I think there's a little connection there.
I agree.
So, but unfortunately, not a whole lot we can do about it except for pray to God that he gets his ass handed to him by Lerone Murphy, and Lerone Murphy goes on into glory, parades around with his nice American flag and drapes it over his dead body, or excuse me, not American flag, United Kingdom flag. I will gladly start supporting the Queen for just this one fight.
Well, and to be fair, if you saw the presser interviews today where they were talking to Lerone Murphy, apparently this young man was shot in the face in his younger days while he was running with a less than friendly element of society, spat the bullets out because apparently they hit teeth and ricocheted around, was able to physically spat the bullets into his hand and get in a car and drive to the hospital himself. So we know that this motherfucker is tough. So I'm hoping that his 5-0 record coming into this fight leaves as a 6-0 record. Come on, Lerone Murphy.
Yes, please. I mean, and he's coming out of Manchester, so
that's what I was going to say. He's coming out of Manchester. We really haven't seen too many terrible fighters come out of Manchester, especially 5-0. He's early in his MMA career. I'm pulling for him in this fight at least, damn it.
Yep.
But that is all we've got for this particular episode here. So I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. Before we head all the way on out of here, if somebody wants to find out what the rest of a video of you watching a Green Bay game looks like, how would they be able to get in touch with you, TJ?
Most of the time, you're not going to catch that on video. This is probably a one and done, unless there's another Thursday night game when we do this. But Wednesday nights, 9:30 Central Time, you can catch me right here on the YouTubes. Golf Tea Vapes. That's 9:30 Central Time. For you guys out east, that's 10:30. For you Pacific time frame, that is 7:30. And then for your middle of America there, that's 8:30. I forget if they call that mountain time or whatever the hell that is. Yeah. Anyhow, you can also catch me on the Instagrizzles. I'm not on there very often. However, I do check the DMs on occasion, usually like once a day or so, namely for this right here reason. Not a whole lot else, but if you do slide in there, I'll definitely get back to you. But yeah, other than that, it was fucking fun. I'm ready to see what happens. I'm not going to say I'm excited about the entirety of this card. I am excited, probably the most excited of the fights, on this, I'll say it now, not the Khabib Dustin fight. I'm more excited about the Barboza Felder fight because I think that's going to be where the money is made on this card. And I really wish those guys were main event because they both, in my opinion, for this fight, they're going to be the ones who put the tickets in the seat.
I agree.
See you guys on Wednesday.
I agree. And thank you for your time, brother. I always appreciate you coming by to give your opinions, give me a perspective that I don't always think of as well. But that's what we're going to call a show for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So if we made you chuckle throughout our shenanigans here, fumbling our way through this MMA story of a show that we presented to you, give us a thumbs up. If we brought you an opinion, maybe a perspective that you didn't think of on your own here, maybe we made a point that you hadn't conceded on your own, maybe subscribe. Hell, if we did something that just got right in the funny bone, share a fucking episode. Doesn't have to be this one. Share one of the other ones. We're always talking the same kind of nonsense. If we're really good and you appreciate us, we appreciate you. Share an episode. Show your friends. Maybe somebody you know like this shit too. The other side of that coin, we're just a pair of dipshits talking into webcams without knowing what the fuck we're talking about. Give us that thumbs down. We earned it, and I won't dispute it in the least bit. With that being said, remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. And for Daddy Dana,
everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip, and a kicking from the